bias trim instead of a little oscillator trim. Anyway, JP, here's the little video I'm making about getting your amp working. I say working because it's working like it did before, maybe a little better. I mean, obviously it makes sound again. And I tidied up a few of the sort of Mickey Mouseries going on in here. So I'll show you what happened. There was like a bunch of marettes in here with the new output transformer that somebody put in. The wires weren't long enough to come from the output transformer to these places, so they maretted them to some other wires and then to the tube sockets, but I just got it directly there and soldered it onto the tube socket. So it's like, marettes are fine in your wall, you know, those are the things that you twist on. I have the ones that I took out around here somewhere. Anyway, they're in your bag with all your other little parts that got changed. But it's not great in an amp that travels around and vibrates all the time while you play it, because they come loose and then they roll around. But worse than that is that the wires that they used to connect are now loose and shorting out other stuff. So this node of your main filter cap, which is 3 capacitors inside that can on the other side, that capacitor can, the first one was dead. So you went and picked me up this 47 microfarad 450 volt cap to put in its place. So instead of the wire going from here to ground, it just goes straight to this cap to ground, and it's secure, it's soldered in. It's not going to be flopping around and flying around or anything. If one of the other two starts to go, you should probably just either get a new can cap with all 3 in it and ditch this, or ditch the can cap. You can keep it in place for cosmetics, but then just, you know, get these tabs out of the way and get 3 new caps that just lay right there, that all go to a ground spot over here maybe. That would be like the, you know, much more permanent fix. So a couple more caps like this dropped in, so all 3 are replaced. But the other 2 in there are good for now. Then you have the deathcap in here still. You can read up about that, but basically in the olden days of 2-prong power cords, sometimes you'd flip it one way and sometimes you'd flip it the other way, and you plug it in the wall and it would make a hum. So they had the death cap in there so that if one of those, it basically was to reduce hum. But now in the days of grounded 3-prong plugs, which you have, somebody already installed it, took the safety ground right to ground there. Basically all it does now is prevent a hazard of death, hence the name, because it takes your power to ground if it ever failed. So I took it out of the circuit and just kept it in place because it looked badass and old school, but it's not actually electrically connected to anything. It's just soldered to this mounting post, which doesn't go anywhere. The mounting post was already there. The speaker jack was super corroded and dirty, so that was probably the other half of your cutting out and making no sound problem. So I cleaned that up and cleaned the other end too. And I tidied up the 1/4-inch speaker jack on here so that you can also use it. I don't know if you ever do, but if you ever want to plug into a cab that has a 1/4-inch speaker connection, then you could use this one. Just always make sure there's a speaker connected, or else you'll be finding yet another output transformer, because that's what kills them, is having the amp cranked up and trying to make sound with no speaker connected, no load connected to the output transformer, and it overheats and burns out the windings. This thing here is not on the schematic, and it's not in normal Vibrochamps, and it's between the wall AC power and the primary of the power transformer. So it's essentially acting like a little current inrush slower downer so that when you power on the amp, because this doesn't have a standby, it very quickly, but not as quickly as without it, ramps up the power, just to take it easy on your power transformer and other components that don't want to just all of a sudden get hit with full wall voltage. So I'm going to leave it in. It's not on the schematic, but it's been in there for 1,000 years and it seems to be working, and it's kind of a cool idea, so we'll leave it. Other mysteries. He's got shielded wire here going from the input jack and the volume pot, which is probably a good idea. These caps are the original bypass caps, and they're probably old and leaky. They are bulging a bit, and what that does is changes their capacitance and maybe lets more or less low end through the circuit at those points, and possibly some DC getting into the signals. So most people by now have changed these. You probably should. They, like, you know, when they're in spec, they can change the EQ of the amp back to normal because it's probably drifted a bit, but it really shouldn't have a huge impact on the sound. But you don't want them to blow up and leak terrible capacitor sauce all over everything else. So that's, again, for down the road. Like, basically, I tidied up the input jacks and made sure nothing's going to come flying off this amp as you go play it, and that it's working. But if you really wanted to, at some point, we could do the caps, we could clean all the pots, we could, make sure that these grounds are securely connected on each pot, so if there's any little tiny hums in the background, then that might tidy that up, although it's pretty good. Anyway, pretty much ready for action. So I'd say maybe battle test it for a while first and see if you want to do major cleanup at any point. Just all this is pretty fucking gronky, and the tube sockets are old and dirty and stuff like that. So if you really want to make it bulletproof for another 20 years, we'd probably do all 3 filter caps and the other electrolytics, these 4 bypass caps, and then clean all the tube sockets, take the pots off for a minute, clean them, and secure the grounds to the chassis. This was actually done right, the 3 wire power cable. So yeah, give it a shot.